Good morning, everyone. I hope you and your loved ones are healthy and are doing as well as possible during the situation we find ourselves in. I'm John Diamond. I'm the president and executive director of the UMaine Alumni Association. So welcome. This is the fourth in a series of presentations by members of the UMaine community about issues related to the pandemic, the fourth one that the Alumni Association has hosted. And today we're going to hear from Ken Ralph, the University of Maine's Director of Athletics. Ken's going to give us an overview of how the pandemic has affected student athletes and UMaine athletics, and will answer questions after he completes his short presentation. Now, if you have questions, there's a simple way to submit them. Some have already come in, and we appreciate that. On the bottom of your screen, you'll see a little cartoon-like speaking bubble, and that's the chat button. Simply click on that and type in your question, and we'll address as many as possible during the time we have available. And so, you know, we are recording this session and we'll be making it available online. So if you don't want your image to appear in that recording, which will be made available at some point in the next day or so, simply go to the video button at the bottom of your screen and click on Stop Video. That way your image won't show up. That's a function that a lot of people are using in these days where it's hard to go get a haircut or take care of your personal grooming. I'm not going to use a lot of time to give you Ken's background. That was presented in the invitation we sent you, but let me just give you the short take on this. He's originally from New Hampshire, but he got to Maine as quickly as possible, and we appreciate that. He was a two-time All-American swimmer at the University of Alaska Anchorage, so he knows what it's like to be a D1 student athlete. And Ken joined the university about a year and a half ago. He had been AD first at Rensselaer Polytech and more recently at Colorado College. And along with his degree from Alaska Anchorage, he has a master's in sports management from California University of Pennsylvania. So with all of that as background, I'm going to turn it over to Ken. And again, welcome and thanks to all of you for joining us.
Hi everybody, how you doing? I'm looking at so many familiar faces. This is fantastic. Some folks I probably wouldn't have seen until the sports season started, and getting a chance to catch up with everybody in late May is really terrific. You know, like John said, I just hope everybody is staying safe and keeping your family safe. You know, it's just different times right now, and we're all adjusting. I can tell you here in athletics, we're actually doing pretty well. We have had nobody test positive here. None of our students have tested positive. We've been able to keep our work going and keeping everybody safe. And we've actually found a lot of new ways to get some things done. So we're actively learning throughout all of this, which is you know, you got to find some positives in all of it. And I think we've found a few. I hope folks have been able to find the videos that I've been posting online. Every couple of weeks, I've tried to put something up to update folks on what's going on with the athletic department. I think the last one was probably 2 weeks ago. And just trying to keep people current and to help them understand what we're going through and what the department is facing. So if you have a chance to click on those and spend a couple minutes, please do so. I'll tell you what, the end of the year in March was rough. It was, you know, you talk about getting hit by a 2x4, you know, right in the face. And that's what it felt like in March. I can tell you exactly where I was as new information kept coming up. It's one of those weird moments in time where you always remember where you were. You know, I've got women's basketball team heading to Stony Brook, about to win an America East championship. And I'm hosting a staff meeting at the time when I get a call from the America East Chancellor, Commissioner, telling me that the America East Championship game is being canceled. And realizing that, you know, I've got a team full of players getting ready to win a title after a remarkable year of accomplishments by them. I just couldn't imagine what they would be going through. And, you know, talking to our hockey team who was having their best season in almost a decade, and, you know, and telling them that their season was over and they weren't going to get a chance to win a title. to see the expression on these kids' faces, to see it to end like that is something I hope I never have to go through again. And, in life, they'll go through tougher times. It's part of getting older. It's part of getting experience. But in that moment of time, for a lot of those kids, that's one of the more trying moments they had ever faced. And I have to tell you, they handled it beautifully. Our coaching staff was absolutely remarkable in how they handled the difficult information that was coming out. And then our spring sports finding out that their seasons were over before they even got a chance to start. It would have been really easy for people to turn on each other, for people to point fingers or place blame. Ultimately, we know the decisions were correct. Ultimately, we know that the decisions to, act the way we did and halt these large-scale gatherings the way we did probably saved lives. And, there's not one game we have ever played in our entire life that's worth somebody's life. So the right decision was made nationally. As hard as it was for our students there, and as hard as it was for the people who love UMaine sports and see UMaine sports as part of their identity, the right decision was made, and we've found ways to work through it. And here's the interesting thing: is as we were going through and trying to process, and the news was changing every day. It was such a surreal time because we're so used to in athletics dealing with absolutes. We're so tied into statistics, and you think about Moneyball, and we analyze everything, and we know where everything is going. We know we've tried to look at all the variables and how do we respond. And for the first time in a lot of our professional lives, we didn't know how to respond to variables that were changing so rapidly and in ways that none of us could ever have imagined. And I'm just so proud of the way our staff handled things. You look at how our sports medicine team stepped in and helped kids understand the protocols they were going to have to follow. You look at what our strength and conditioning staff did to make sure that these kids could stay fit, stay healthy, and keep sending a positive message. And what our coaches did to help our students adapt to a completely different learning environment when all of our courses shifted online is just remarkable. It was a group of people who really rose to a difficult situation and handled it with a degree of class and dignity and professionalism that I hope all of you who love UMaine and UMaine sports can take a great deal of pride in the way it was done. And I know as somebody who works with this group every day and seeing their innovation, seeing their creativity, seeing their drive to make the best out of this has been really remarkable. And you say, okay, well, great. That's, Ken, that's great. It's anecdotal information, but it's not all anecdotal, because I'll give you a big fact that just came out a couple days ago. Our grade point average for the spring semester as a department was a 3.53. That is all 17 sports combined, 3.53, the highest in the history of UMaine athletics. It was several of our sports set all-time highs for GPA. Football was above a 3.0 for the first time in the history of the program. Basketball was above a 3.0 for just the second time in program history for a semester. Women's hoop was a 3.85. That's unbelievable. I mean, that's absolutely remarkable. When you take a team like that with so many kids from international destinations who English isn't their first language, and coming in and putting up numbers like that, I mean, come on, that's absolutely stunning. Quite frankly, we were quite scared that it could have gone the other way, that we could have really struggled academically. But in talking to our students and talking to our coaches, one of the things that was really stressed was the coaches were on their case nonstop to make sure they were on top of their classwork. And I think we learned a lot about how we communicate with our students and the quality of that communication. Just like this call, majority of the communication that we've had with our students has been through Zoom meetings. Now, we've done individual calls and we've done one-on-one FaceTimes, and we've found different ways to communicate. But this has proven to be a very, very valuable tool. It's our primary use in recruiting now too, as we get all of our coaches and we get some faculty and we get a couple of recruits on a call, and we can actually do some really incredible recruiting work using this particular platform. So not only did it help us this new method of communication help us have an incredible semester academically, but it's helped us in terms of moving ourselves forward, in terms of recruiting, in terms of connections. A call like this, connecting with alumni. I'm not sure we all would have been able to be face-to-face in May without this particular platform and without John arranging this call. It's a wonderful opportunity. And again, we're finding positives out of what unfortunately is seen as a negative. We're going to have some challenges coming up. All right. I mean, we're putting a rosy picture on how this all ended, how a tough situation ended positively for the semester, but we're going to have some challenges coming up. And I don't want to soft pedal that. We know financially we're going to have some challenges coming up depending on how we're able to participate here in the fall. We are planning on a fall return. All right. We have submitted a plan to get our students back here safely. We have submitted a plan that will have us participating in our fall sports in our normal timeline, but everything is predicated on ensuring that we can keep our students safe and we can keep our staff safe. There's not a 100% way to do that, especially when you think about contact sports. You think about a bunch of football players banging into each other. Unless you're 100% sure with testing that they can do that, there's no 100% positive way to keep it safe. However, we are focusing our planning on those fall dates, and we are progressing as if those are going to happen on timeline. We have also developed contingency plans in case we cannot stick to that particular timeline. So if we have to get bumped back and start seasons in October, we have our contingency plans in place to do that. If we get to a situation where a fall sport may have a spring sport based on returns, we have a contingency plan that enables us to do that. It's going to be a little bit more difficult with the revenue sports. And the reality is when you're dealing with people's health, revenue cannot be a driver. People's health supersedes anything we do in terms of revenue generation. UMaine is a little different than most of our peers because we rely so much more heavily on external generated funds. Those funds are ticket revenue, fundraising, foundation support, sponsors, corporate partners. We generate a significantly higher percentage of our budget through those externally generated funds than most of our peers do. And since those funds are a little bit up in the air going into this next year in terms of what's the economy going to look like? Are businesses going to be able to invest? Are fans going to show up for games and feel comfortable sitting in a crowd? Are we even going to be able to do that? How is the stock market going to perform long term? And are the returns on our endowments and other strategic investments going to return what we need them to return? We're looking for answers and there are very few. We're going to have to be very, very nimble. We're going to have to be able to adjust quickly on the fly. And it's one of the reasons we've done so many contingency plans. But again, there's nothing normal about this upcoming year. And we understand that. And we're going to embrace that. I think if we go into it afraid of it, I think if we go in and we're too timid, I don't think we do a good service for our students. And I don't think we're showing very good leadership. I think we have to stay strong. I think we have to stay positive. I think we have to stay completely engaged. And I think we have to, keep telling people what the truth is. We're not going to hide anything. There's nothing that we're not being willing to put out there publicly in terms of what we're anticipating for our students. A frequent question we've been getting recently is what happens to students who are uncomfortable returning to their role in athletics based on what we're dealing with the novel coronavirus. We will not withdraw a scholarship from a student who doesn't wish to participate or who potentially has an underlying medical condition which could make them vulnerable, or maybe lives with family who have underlying medical conditions. Our scholarships, we call them athletic scholarships, but they're to go to school. That scholarship is to get your degree. That is not to play your sport. That is to get your degree. And so we're going to make sure that our students are 100% safe, that they are confident that we're putting in every measure that we can to keep them safe. Now, there's no 100% safe, but we want to do everything we can to keep them as safe as possible. If at any point we feel that we're not able to keep our students safe, we will stop our activities, regroup, determine a safer course of action, and then re-engage. again, we will not do anything to compromise the health and safety of our students, not do anything to compromise the health and safety of this community. One of the things we also recognize is a lot of our biggest fans, our biggest supporters, the folks most engaged with our department, and I'm looking at the screen right now, and so many people on the screen volunteer for us and do events for us and, are really engaged, but a number are also a part of the vulnerable populations. And as you think about 14,000 students all returning to UMaine from various parts of the world, this could be a bit of an incubator right off the bat. So, we want to make sure that we're keeping all of you who engage with us at such a high level and do so frequently, we want to make sure we're keeping you safe as well. So there might be some changes in how we interact with certain volunteers or the way we're doing certain programs to make sure we don't put anybody at risk. I know that's been a question that's come to me from several of you who are saying, hey, can't wait to be back. Can I still help out at football games, or can I still help out at, events that are being run? We want to make sure we can do that safely. Okay. And I just want everybody to know that that's going to be a primary driver of anything we do. This is new for all of us, and we're going to feel our way through a little bit. But we recognize the value of Division I athletics to this community and to this institution. We do an awfully good job of managing a competitive Division I athletic department on relatively modest resources. But our teams and our coaches have found ways not just to survive, but to thrive. And you take a look at some of the results we've had recently, whether it's what women's basketball has done in the last several years and the run they've been on. You look at the year men's hockey had last year, or you look at the Final Four run, for football. We had a track athlete, win a World Junior Championship. We had the American East Swimmer of the Year a year ago, and Juliana McDonald. We've found ways to craft exciting results for Maine with relatively modest resources. We are prepared to handle this because we've got such creative, responsible folks in this athletic department. And a lot of the credit goes to the coaches, but it also goes to the students who recognize that, this is what we have, these are the resources available, and we're going to take them and we're going to do something special with it. And it's a little bit of how the university works as a whole. We tend to outperform our resources. We tend to make great use of what is available to us. We also tend to only ask for things that we really need. And I think that's going to serve us well as you think about your university, your flagship land grant, sea grant, and space grant institution weathering this coronavirus downturn. I think University of Maine is going to come out of it in a strong position. I think that you're going to see us take steps forward in certain areas, especially when you take a look at things like you're seeing a school here that has outperformed in terms of applicants and deposits for the entering class for next year. You're looking at a school where the transfer numbers for next year are up. There's a lot of positive metrics right now around the University of Maine. Now, we have to turn those into matriculations in the fall, and a lot of that's going to be dependent on us being in person and face-to-face instruction. But the university has done a very, very good job in managing a challenging time. I've been very impressed. I've only been here 2 years, but I've been very impressed with how the university has managed their resources in this time, how they've cared for the people who work here at the university, how they've cared for their students, and a lot of that came through the student assistance fund that was set up, and also the distribution of the CARES Act fund that the university received. You're looking at a place that has really handled itself well, managed itself well, and is doing everything possible to position itself not just for survival, but for growth. I think all of us want to see UMaine not just survive, but thrive. I mean, we want to see this university take the next step. I keep being staggered by the work that's being done here is absolutely remarkable. And I learn something new, I think, every day about the University of Maine. And I want people to remain upbeat and positive about their university and the direction the university has taken. Will next year be different? I think it will be. I think we're going to have some hybrid educational models that get used. We may have some athletic events where we don't have full stadiums. We may have to deliver our content a little differently than we have in the past. We may have some events or activities that normally would have been a face-to-face that now become a virtual, or we may have things that just get delayed a little bit until the pandemic passes and we can be back to celebrating all together as a group. We all have to be a little bit understanding that we are just in a different environment for a period of time here. But I want people to stay engaged. I want people to stay excited. I want people to lean on their alumni office for support, and lean on their athletic department for support, and lean on their university for support. We're going to get through this together, but we're going to come out better on the other side of it. We're going to learn some things in the process. And more than anything, we're going to find out what we're really made of. And, it's okay to be tested every now and then. And for anybody, and a number of people on this call were athletes, or were really heavily involved in this department. And that you find out a lot about people when times get tough. But we're going to find out a lot about folks right now. And I think a lot of good things. I think for those of you who know me well, I tend to be an eternal optimist. And it's way more fun to be an optimist. And I just feel great about how we're going to come out of this. Yes, there will be challenges. Don't let me soft sell the fact that there are going to be challenges. But we're going to meet them, and we're going to come through them well. And I'm confident of that, and hopefully all of you are as well. And I know, John, you said that some questions have been submitted. I'd be happy to answer those. And if you want to kick that off, I'm sure there's folks that would have some similar questions would have come in.
Sure. Thanks so much, Ken. Very appreciated. In fact, several questions have come in already, and several congratulating you on the academic achievement of student athletes and the record you mentioned at the beginning of your presentation. And one of these says that accomplishment is a reflection on your leadership and the dedication to academic success by your staff, coaches, and their assistants. So that reflects several of the points that were shared here. One question, and there are many here, but what about the state budget and its impact on the university and then by consequence impact on athletics? How does that fit with your planning for the next academic year, and how does that fit with what the NCAA is talking to you about? And you're talking with the NCAA, of course.
Yeah, and honestly, we're still going through the budget planning process here on campus, and we're modeling out a bunch of different scenarios based on whether we'll be face-to-face with instruction using a hybrid model, or whether we'll be at using distance learning like we did in the spring. And each one ends up with as you can imagine, a different outcome from a revenue perspective back to the campus. The state has been pretty good in terms of their support to higher education, but some of that is going to be impacted in terms of state tax receipts seen at the state level. And I know a number of people are very concerned about what summer will look like in a state that's very heavily dependent on tourism for state tax receipts. We've been given our number from the state. I know the chancellor and the president have worked hard at developing budgets that fit. We've all been asked on campus to look at our individual portfolios and see ways that we could operate more efficiently. And it's interesting, we have some natural savings that have availed themselves just because of the change in how we have to operate. Summer, we spend an extraordinary amount of money in the summer on recruiting, because the majority of the time in the summer, our coaches live on the road recruiting athletes. So a lot of our summertime recruiting money is not being used and will result in a savings. We are now conducting league meetings face-to-face. Most of our professional development, we're not doing league meetings face-to-face. We're doing them virtually, so there's a savings there. We have our professional development opportunities have mostly been moved to online platforms. So we don't have the travel and hotel expenses and others for professional development opportunities. We are also seeing a number of schools that are reducing the number of games they're allowing their teams to play. And that's going to result in a few of our teams having fewer opponents available this year. So playing fewer games will result in some savings there. We've also rolled back payments to groups like officiating. We have eliminated a number of our subscription services that we've utilized in the past, and quite frankly, we don't think we're going to miss them, but we're talking really dramatic savings in some subscription services that have just sort of been in existence for years and years. So we've recognized some savings that are not going to have a big impact to the quality of the experience from our students. We also are involved in discussions with our leagues about reorganizing some schedules to create more regionalized competition. So we could potentially be in situations where our travel to games is shorter, where we may work cooperative agreements with other local leagues like the NEC or the MAAC to craft pod-style scheduling with closer opponents. There'd be some pretty significant savings there, again, without really dramatically impacting the student experience. You know, so we've got a number of those things going on, and every division on campus is looking at ways that they can become more efficient. And you know, it's amazing how many things you've done forever that you just don't think much about, that you spend a lot of money on, that really doesn't have much of a payout. And sometimes these hard resets force you to reevaluate those elements. And I think it's going to make us even more efficient and going to make us leaner. The biggest impact to us will be felt if we can't generate revenue through some of our key drivers, whether it be ticket revenue, sponsorship revenue through our relationship with Learfield. They're our multimedia rights holder, where we get a guaranteed distribution from them every year. And if we don't have games, they have the right to claw some of that money back. And finally, our TV pieces. So we have a potential revenue shortfall. What happens if our guarantee games in basketball and football don't get played? But we'll have contingency plans in place in case that happens.
Got to unmute. A lot of questions about what's going to happen in terms of philanthropic support for athletics. Alphon Fund is critical, of course, to UMaine athletics and the other gifts, the Savage Fund and others. How are you progressing as an organization with those important philanthropic activities in a time where people are staying at home and not engaged in the kind of activities that help grow that?
I got to be honest, our donors and key supporters have been nothing short of wonderful. I think they recognize we're just in a different time, and so many have stepped up rather than pulling back. And Seth Woodcock, who works with the UMaine Foundation and is our primary fundraiser here in athletics, has been extraordinarily active, engaging with folks and again, in new and exciting ways. And there's almost more outreach happening now. And you mentioned our relationship with the Alphon Foundation, and it's really strong right now. And Greg Powell and Travis Cummings, who are our primary contacts with that organization, have been incredibly supportive, very understanding, recognizing that their support is a key driver in moving us forward. And I couldn't be more complimentary of them and the organization that they have at the Harold Alphon Foundation, their board. I know we've been working on some significant projects with them, and they are asking us to keep going. They see this as something that's important to the state of Maine. They see UMaine athletics as an important element of what we're doing here in Orono, and we could not be in a better position with any of them. They've been wonderful, nothing short of wonderful.
Great, glad to hear that. Well, let's talk a little bit about facilities now, because one of the questions that came in was asking about the condition of the current football field and the track, and what is the timetable, or I know you've been working on plans to address that. Can you elaborate on what you're up to and where things are?
Yeah, I think a lot of people know we've been pretty active with establishing a master plan for athletics to address facilities. And quite honestly, there's not one facility on campus we look at and say really up to the standard that we would like here at the University of Maine. The track and the football field are in dire need of support. And we're getting pretty close to not being able to pass our GMAX testing on the football field. We've probably got another year we can go out there. The track is borderline unusable. We are those facilities are obviously part of our long-term master plan, but we're trying to develop a plan that touches all the facilities utilized by our teams. And we're also looking at how do we establish a facilities master plan that helps drive folks to the University of Maine and supports a lot of our other initiatives beyond athletics. So you think about the idea of summer camps and clinics, you think about rentals, you think about the idea we should be hosting more high school, regional, and state championships here in Orono. There should be a destination for high school teams, and then we could show off our university while these students are here. And we want to do more to develop facilities that can handle those types of large-scale events. Summer AAU events in basketball and some other sports, summer traveling soccer events and softball events. Let's drive students to Orono, potential students, potential tuition-paying, University of Maine students, potential alumni of UMaine. We've got to get them here in the first place. And athletics is a great way to engage people in a very positive manner and getting here to campus that first time. And I'm a big believer that once people are on this campus and they get a chance to walk around and meet the people, we have a better chance to convert them into becoming students here at the University of Maine, especially as we think about drawing out-of-state students, or we think about drawing students from the southern tier of Maine, let's say down Cumberland County area. The old adage that it's a 2-hour drive from Orono to Portland, but an 8-hour drive from Portland to Orono, I still think impacts. And not as many kids from Portland are looking at UMaine as a school of first choice. But if they're up here and they're engaging in their athletic pursuits when they're in high school or with their club teams, and they fall in love with this area the way we all did, then I think we got a chance to get more of them here. So I think that's a big component of what we're discussing as part of our athletic facility build out, is not only do we meet the needs of our Division I athletic teams, but also we meet the greater needs of the university as we think about recruitment of future students and providing opportunities for students once they are here. And we've really got some fun ideas. We're starting to work on a plan to go out to some key donors to help us support the vision that we're putting together. We recognize certain needs, like the football field and track, are more immediate than maybe others are. So we have to adjust the plan to make sure the safety needs are accommodated, but we can't allow the safety needs to derail the full master plan. We need this to be a win for the University of Maine.
Great, thanks so much. One of the other questions that came in was related to how you go forward in light of the conditions and expectations of Title IX. Do you want to address that?
Well, I mean, it's a great question because, in doing an evaluation here when I arrived and engaging with our legal counsel here and utilizing some contacts that I have with the Office of Civil Rights, who oversees federal Title IX compliance and gender equity complaints, we were operating significantly outside the boundaries of federal law in that area. We have worked up a report through our legal counsel, and a lot of the facility upgrades will address some really key elements within our Title IX deficiencies. It's very important, and it's something we can't diminish the importance of here on this call. And federal law is not something we can either choose to abide by or not abide by. We have to abide by it. But more importantly, it's a fairness issue and an equity issue of what's the right thing to do. And it's not about the letter of the law, it's about the intent of the law and the meaning of the law. And I believe the University of Maine can be a leader in gender equity issues. And you take a look at what we've done in women's sports here at the University of Maine over the years, and there's a lot of points of pride that come out of our women's sports programs. And a lot of that has been done with less than stellar support from across the campus. If we can start to put in the right level of support, give them the right facilities, and provide the right backstops, you're going to see women's sports at Maine thrive. Not only will we be in compliance with the law, but I think this will be a significant driver, reputational driver for the University of Maine for years to come.
Great, thanks so much. Just a second. Have you had any guidance from the university or from the NCAA on the issue of international students? And obviously the issues related to international students is different You might want to address those in terms of student athletes who are international students and some of the unique situations that they're facing as they plan to come back for the fall.
Can this be like the game show password? When I get a really tough one, can I just say pass and move on to the next one? This is honestly, this is a really tough one because, you know, with the travel restrictions that are out there right now, and for a lot of our students in the countries they're living in, they don't have access to their airports and they have no way to get back. And we have students from 28 different nations who are part of our athletic program here at Maine. And it's honestly, it's one of the most fun parts of my job is, you know, these students from all over. I learn so much from every one of them, and they bring elements of their culture and their background and their, you know, and their traditions to Maine. And it really creates a living learning laboratory right here in the athletic department. And it's so much fun, and so much would be lost if we don't have these international students here with us. But we also have a number of teams where probably half the students are international, if not more. And if we don't get those international students back, I'm not entirely sure how we put a team on the field. You look at women's soccer, you look at men's basketball, you look at field hockey, and a significant chunk of those teams are international. It can be a challenge. We are working with the Department of State. We are working with a number of different organizations who are crafting strategies for these students. One of the big challenges is right now, the U.S. consulates in a number of these countries are not open, so they can't even renew their educational visa. So if we can't get the visa renewed, we can't get them back. And, you know, so we're juggling a lot of things with these international students, and it's a handful right now. But we're committed to these students. We want them here. We see what they add to our environment here. And for folks who really value diversity as a key element of learning, our international students do so much to invigorate life here in the department that we've got to find ways to get them back here.
Great, thanks so much. One thing I forgot to mention earlier to everybody participating is on your screen at the bottom, there's a little, looks like a couple that says participants. If you click on that, there's a function there that allows you to raise your hand if you want to pose a question. And we have one person, Ricky Latondra, Hall of Famer, who's here, and I'd like to, he's got a question to ask. So Ricky, I am trying to open you up so you can ask your question. You're not quite there. There you go.
Okay.
I think he's good now.
Good.
What's up, Ricky?
Hey, good. Yeah, good morning, everybody. I want to thank the 55 participants on this Zoom call to get better educated about what the University of Maine is doing. I want to harken back to a couple things you mentioned, Ken, because I think it's relevant to this conversation going forward. One is thank you for mentioning the sports medicine program at the beginning, because without the sports medicine program, of which I'm a byproduct of, you're not going to have a good foundation with this COVID-19. So that all said and done, I do also want to point out that we Mainers have always been proud of doing more with less. And in this particular case with COVID-19, doing more with less is not a healthy way to go and proceed forward. So please, everybody on this call, consider supporting the university with regards to funding, because if we don't stomp out and control this COVID-19, the athletic department's not going to be able to do what they've done. And congratulations to your award, my good friend Ken, for what you garnered in the fall of last year. And also thank you for the GPA. That is just astounding. But students like me have left the university, so it was easier to climb up to the GPA total without me. Thank you for that.
You know, multiple people have mentioned that, you know, but no, I mean, our sports medicine staff has been extraordinary. And Mark, I mean, you would be so proud of them and what they've done in this time. They completely redid all of our emergency action plans for our indoor and outdoor facilities. They've created these new COVID-19 checklists. They've adopted to the new NCAA return to play policies. Many of them are serving on our COVID-19 response team. You know, there's a new partnership now in sports medicine and our sports performance areas where they're going to have a bigger say in return to play, whether it be from time away or from concussions or whatever. And it's all been codified now. And Mark, their work output through all this will really make you proud. So you should be really, really thrilled with what Ryan Taylor and his team have done. They've been extraordinary.
Great. Thanks, Ken. Question about your communication or the department's communication with current student athletes. And you addressed this earlier, but somebody asked if you have polled student athletes, or what is the level of communication that you and the coaches and the other members of your team are having with student athletes in terms about of their own needs in the summer, not just in coming back, but how they're doing in the summer?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question. We've been using the coaches as our primary communicator, but we are also using Samantha Hegman, who is our senior woman administrator and is our associate athletic director for compliance. Our sports medicine staff, our sports performance staff, and even our event staff has been actively engaged in working with our students. We've also kept in touch with our student athlete advisory committee, which is a representative group of all the sports in terms of concerns that they may have. Some of the biggest concerns have been around mental health related issues, because I think students are so used to being social creatures, and now being put into this environment it has raised some underlying elements that are students are struggling to adapt to. And so we've created a system where we're able to provide mental health counseling through online delivery, and that's really helped a number of our students, and a significant number have taken us up on the opportunity to engage with our counseling center in that particular fashion. The biggest thing we've done is we want to make sure no kid falls through the cracks, that we're keeping constant levels of communication up. Like I said, the front line is the coaches, but also, using the support staff on the back of that. I think we're going to have some significant concerns with as kids try to acclimate back into an on-campus experience. There's going to be some fears. They're going to be worried about what's going on with their families at home. They may have a friend who gets sick. So we're going to need to be there to respond very quickly to them, and we're trying to put those supports in place. We actually have a pool of money. It was a distribution from the NCAA a couple of years ago to deal with mental health issues, and we're going to use a significant chunk of money from that particular fund to help the students get reassimilated back into an on-campus environment, and to make sure that athletes are famous for telling you they're fine when they're not fine. So we need to make sure we have enough people talking to them to be able to see through the bravado and to see what's lying underneath to make sure we can care for them.
Very good. Thanks. When you brought up the NCAA, I think people would be interested in hearing about the frequent conversations you're having with other ADs and with the NCAA administration itself about moving forward. Can you give us the latest on, not necessarily any conclusions, but where the conversations are and what the top concerns are nationally?
Yeah, it's been a really interesting experience for me watching what's going on with other athletic directors and conference commissioners. There's lots of people doing a tremendous amount of talking with no information. I think a lot of people are using this as an opportunity to promote their own brands, and it's getting in the way right now of really sifting through positive information that we can use. We should be listening to scientists, and we should be listening to medical professionals. You shouldn't be listening to athletic directors. At the NCAA level, it's Dr. Brian Hanline who is really our primary driver of information, and we're trying to get everything we can from him and the medical team that he has put together. He uses virologists and epidemiologists from around the country at some of the best schools, at the Johns Hopkins, at UCLA, at Michigan, to gather information and make sure that we have that at our fingertips for good decision making. The NCAA has made some significant budget cuts. They've really pulled back on their distribution amounts for next year. They've cut back dramatically in their national staffing. They have really restricted a lot of travel. So we're seeing some pretty significant shifts at the NCAA. You're also starting to see some rifts, because this whole COVID-19 thing hit at a really bad time for collegiate athletics, because we are right at the precipice of seeing any illusions of amateurism we ever had go by the wayside. You are about to see the gap between the schools that have a lot and the schools that don't have a lot grow dramatically. And we've got an issue on the table with name, image, and likeness, which basically allows students to bring in sponsors to sponsor their own personal brands around their participation in athletics that has never been allowed before. So think about students being able to go out to a car dealership and get sponsored by a car dealership and earn money off it. That's never been allowed. But the ramifications of that and how that will ripple through the system are unbelievable, because now you'll see big Power 5 football coaches use it as a recruiting inducement that, hey, we've got a local supermarket chain that's owned by a booster who's going to give you, $100,000 a year to make 2 appearances there signing autographs. And the kids, they're going to use it to, to recruit students to their programs. And smaller programs like Maine are not going to have those kind of an opportunities. And there's an ethical consideration there that's going to be big. We also have a change in transfer regulations that's going to come out in the 2021-22 academic year, in which students in the revenue sports will no longer have to do an academic year in residence to be eligible at their new school. So imagine us having a superstar athlete like a Blanca Milan in women's basketball, one of the best basketball players in the East and the dominant player in America East. Imagine if all of a sudden Boston College decides they want her and she doesn't have to sit a year in residence, and Boston College could not only offer her money for name, image, and likeness, but could give her immediate eligibility to play in the ACC and get more exposure for her personal brand. You're not going to see a kid like Blanca Milan play 4 years at Maine anymore because this rule change has happened. Or maybe it means that Jeremy Swayman doesn't stay. Maybe it means Chris Ferguson doesn't stay. We're worried about that. So all of this hitting at the same time really creates a perfect storm of issues at the NCAA level. You're seeing a number of schools pull back hard in terms of their budgets. University of Louisville just announced a 20% reduction in their budget. Youngstown State this morning eliminated 22 positions in their athletic department. And they're a school, they're a department about our size. Think about it, 22 positions here would be 30% of our staff going away. But that's what Youngstown State did this morning. We're seeing some pretty significant cuts from schools within our own geographic footprint here. And I think you're going to see more. You saw Furman cut 2 sports. You saw Appalachian State cut 3 sports. You've seen, some big well-known programs go by the wayside, and more of it's going to happen. Now, the question becomes, was this something already in the pipeline that schools were considering, or is this a reaction to a reduction in revenue because of the pandemic we're in? One of the things that we're following here is we have not made any reductions to staffing. We have not asked anybody to take involuntary furloughs yet, and we have not had any discussions at all about discontinuing any sports programs. So I want to make sure people understand that's our stance. But we're seeing some scary stuff out there, and I'm curious to see what happens if we go through a rebound, our tuition revenues come back. Is this a 1-year drop, or does this now become a little bit more permanent in higher education? I think you're going to see a reset in how higher education is delivered. I'm curious to see how this plays out long-term for athletics.
Point. You mentioned the Power 5 conferences. Some of the quotes that have come out from coaches, not so much ADs, but coaches have talked about the importance in their minds of bringing student athletes back to compete in the fall, even if the student body as a whole is not coming back to campus. And they're stressing the reason for that is being the importance of revenue to their institutions as well as to their programs. Do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, again, are we really going to use students as a revenue excuse? I'm not sure I think there's a pretty significant ethical conundrum going on there. Bill Moos, who is the athletic director at Nebraska, came out this morning and talked about they're expecting to see a $24 to $32 million shortfall potentially in athletic revenues if they have to play in empty stadiums. And so they say, well, we have to get our students back. Well, no, it's not the students' fault that the revenue is going to fall. Everything has to be predicated on safety. And, I cringe every time I see one of those comments. In some respects, I look at a Maine and say, Penobscot County, Maine is a really, really safe place to be riding out the pandemic. We are in excellent shape. We've not had a new case in several days. We've only had one passing directly attributed to the pandemic. This is a really safe place to have your students. And we have medical support here through our sports medicine office. So in some respects, I look and say, from where some of our students are sitting currently, and we recruit heavily through the mid-Atlantic states, through New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, where they are much more vulnerable, that they might be far safer being here with us in a safer location and with medical care close by. So we can make a pretty good argument that we'd be better off having our students back. And we should also remember, especially as it relates to football, that this pandemic is impacting the African-American community disproportionately. And a number of our students involved in our football program are of African-American descent. So would it be safer for them to be here where it's a safer environment, where we can keep an eye on them medically? I think you can make a pretty good argument for that and have a sound ethical foundation for wanting to do that. But if you're just bringing students back and saying, well, we have to generate revenue, I really have a hard time with that. I want our students to be back and to be prepared and to be happy and healthy and enjoying the experience. But if they're just being used as a tool to generate revenue, I would not feel good about that at all.
All right, that's I think something we can all appreciate, and I watched a lot of nodding heads as I look at the screen here. We talk about generating revenue for institutions by having sports, collegiate sports happening during the fall semester, even if students aren't there. What about the issue of having games played while the university is in session, but without fans at all? Can you address that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a scenario.
Not at all, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the scenarios we've been asked to model. And every school in the country that has a sport with a foundational crowd is being asked to model this. So for us, we're really looking at football, men's hockey, men's and women's basketball as how we could model different scenarios of crowd participation. Obviously the worst case scenario would be we don't have the sports. We're told that we're not able to play, we can't keep the players safe, and we lose the season just like we lost our spring seasons this past year. The next level up is we can play the game, but we cannot have any spectators. Kind of like you're seeing with the German Bundesliga in soccer right now, is they are playing games with players who've been tested like crazy, but there's not a single body in the stands. That's kind of that next level up. And we've looked at that and basically saying you have to model it based on absolute essential game staff. If we were to do something like that, we would really have to ramp up our ability to provide a really compelling online viewing experience for our fans so they're able to follow their team even if they can't do so in person. The next level up is really a kind of a modified social distancing attendance element. And what we've done is we've taken our playing venues and run a bunch of different scenarios in how we can section off seating areas to allow us to practice the social distancing required from the state, but still allow a set number of people to be able to join us in the venue. It's a tricky one because we might have a 10,000 seat football stadium where we can only have 1,800 spectators. How do you determine which 1,800 spectators get to be there? And how do you ensure social distancing protocols are being followed? And people who are used to chairback seats might not get a chairback seat. What do you do with your students? What do you do with your band? What do you do with some of those other elements? That's all part of the mix. The next level up is sort of, in essence, a half capacity model where you would look and say, okay, if we have a 10,000 seat venue for football, we can put 5,000 people in, everybody having to wear masks, everybody having temperature checks on their way through the door. Might have to do some different things in how we handle bathrooms and concessions than what people are used to, but maybe at least we have a little bit more of a crowd element. And then obviously the top tier was we just go forward like we normally do if we can do so safely.
And it is, I assume we're correct in that what you are doing with UMaine Athletics is based on what you and your colleagues around the country are talking about as practices. We're not looking at a situation that is exclusively UMaine. Whatever it is, it's going to be comparable to what other institutions are doing. Is that correct?
It is. And, we've looked at plans from a bunch of different schools, and we've looked at schools that are significantly larger than us, and we've looked at peers and how they're handling things. And we've also got to realize that we have a resource issue to manage, because we found out some of the models we were putting forward are extraordinarily expensive in how you manage getting a smaller number of people into your facility. So we have to recognize we have to be a little bit cautious with that. Our plan will be unique to Maine because our facilities are unique to Maine. We'll also have to work hand in hand with the Cross Center in Bangor as we look at the return for women's basketball and men's basketball and what we'll be able to do. Now, remember, we are a tenant in that building. We don't own it. And so the management company that oversees that facility will dictate the basketball policies to us. But what we do for football, what we do for men's hockey, we will determine that plan based on the best scenario for our particular facilities. The challenging ones are actually going to be, what do we do with soccer? What do we do with field hockey? Those are not ticketed events. It's a wide open walk in and enjoy the game type of environment. We're going to have to figure out ways that we can create seating opportunities. It might be putting a spot on the ground. We see a lot of places now that are doing these, putting these little circles down that people consider stand in these circles, and you can have social distancing there. I have no desire to be the social distance police, but we do need to make sure people are safe. We probably will ask folks to wear masks.
Very good. One question that came in, we've got a couple of minutes left, asking about the future of tailgating at events.
It's a great question, and it's one that's probably as hotly debated among my peers as anything else we're doing, because tailgating is so ingrained in the culture of the event. And in some folks, the tailgate means every bit as much as the game. And, if it were today, what is it, May, whatever, 28th, we would not have tailgating if it's today. We will rely on CDC guidance for this. A lot of it is going to be based on, how many people are going to be allowed in the lot. Are we going to be allowed to have people to congregate in a small space? Will masks be enough? Are there cleaning protocols we can put in place? Are there ways that we can ensure people coming into tailgate will follow the rules? We just don't have enough information yet to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down. We recognize how important tailgating is to so many folks. And I mean, look, the Alumni Association runs a great tailgate, and the M Club runs a great tailgate, and the Alphond Ambassadors run a great tailgate, and we all want to see that happen. And so we'll do what we can. Like I said, right now, May 28th, I would say if it were today and we had a football game, we wouldn't have a tailgate. But in September, we don't know how this is going to change. If we can do it safely, we'll have a tailgate. If we can't do it safely, we're going to have to ask people to be understanding.
Very good. Thanks. One last question, and it's one that Amy Volk will be posing. Aisha, I'm going to ask you to unmute her because I can't find her on my screen.
There she is.
Hi, I'm not using video. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We got you, Amy.
So we're just wondering, I think you sort of addressed it, but you said you're not having any conversations about eliminating it or cutting any programs. If you did have to do that, what happens, like what is being to the other schools? Do all of those athletes also lose their scholarships, or they just continue on with academic scholarships and they don't participate in a sport?
Okay, you're a little bit garbled there, but I think your question was, you heard me that we're not having discussions about eliminating sports, but if for some reason we ended up in that spot, would the students be able to keep their scholarships?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, the answer to that is absolutely. I mean, boy, ethically, I couldn't live with myself if we pulled scholarships away from students. That would just be, that would be awful. I can't picture anybody at the University of Maine acting in an irresponsible manner like that. scholarship expenses for us run about 6.9 million dollars a year. So it's a pretty significant part of our $20 million a year budget. But like I said, those scholarships are for academics. Those are, they're earned through athletic accomplishments, but they're to go to school. And we want to make sure we're supporting these students. We want them to be UMaine alumni. We want them to be part of this alumni association going forward. That's the ultimate goal. And we know if the sport were to go away, and again, please, I want to emphasize, we've had no discussions about that. But again, the goal would be to have as many of those students finish at Maine. And for those who didn't want to finish here and wanted to go finish out their playing careers elsewhere, we would help them do that. But again, please, 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 we are having no discussions about sport discontinuation.
Purely hypothetical. Yeah, thanks. Well, Ken, thank you so much, and thanks to everybody else. So before we log off, I want to point out that we'll be doing these. Oh, sorry, Ken, did you have one more thing to?
Yeah, I mean, I just was hoping I'd get a chance to say thank you to everybody for being here. And, I know it's uncertain times, and for all of you to stay engaged with your university is fantastic. Please participate in all of these that John and the Alumni Association are doing. It's an important way to keep these connections, and it's probably more important than ever. And I think a lot of you know that athletics leans very heavily on the Alumni Association for a number of things we do. Not just events like this or our tailgates, but also the relationship with the M Club, which is the Letter Winners Association for the athletic department. And the Alumni Association does a lot of wonderful events for teams on the road. A great one we had scheduled for this year that got blown up was baseball, going to be down in Florida. We had a great turnout for that. But I just want to thank everybody from the Alumni Association who's so heavily involved in making sure our athletes have a great experience at Maine and are going to be great Black Bear alumni long term. So John, thank you. And for everybody here, thank you.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate that, Ken. You're a great partner and a great campus leader. I just wanted to mention to everybody that we are doing these webinars on a variety of topics every other week, and we continue to add to the slate. Some are related to involve campus faculty members and administrators. We did a panel with students last week, but we'll also have others related to the topic of UMaine athletics coming down. We hope to have coaches, more than one coach over a period of time. You'll be getting within the next day or two, you'll be getting a survey asking you about how this worked for you and asking you for suggestions about topics that you'd like to see us cover. So look for that email again it'll be coming to the address for which with which you signed up for this event. So with that, please stay safe. Thank you again. And once again, thanks to Ken for everything you're doing as a University Maine leader. Take care, folks.